of Nautilus Graves combo in that top lane, and that could be what we see.
It's a sick combo. You can definitely make this one work, and the Braum would be coming out here from Mithy. Really strong against the likes of Jhin. You can really block that. It also blocks Orianna's ball, which is tremendously important in a team fight, and it also denies Rengar having another squishy support to kill, because normally right now the meta favors
tricks. This one is going to be explosive as we finally get on to Summoner's Rift.
This will be a good one. Should be a good one.
Absolutely.
Two of the best teams in Europe.
I like the start.
One another. Once again, G2 looks like they're setting up for a potential invade into Unicorn.
Oh, they're pinging the brush. This could be danger. 5v5. Oh, good Braum Q to start things off. They get a double dazzle. Flashing forward, it's expect. We got the level 1 party. It's going to be Exile caught. Blown up for first blood. Shy of a minute.
G2 already with the aggression. They're not done yet.
They might get rid of Chachi, and they do. Expect throws the anchor right into his face. That is a hell of a way to start the game. What a statement from G2.
G2-0 right off the bat, getting themselves 2 very quick kills. One onto Perks, one onto Expect. You couldn't ask for much more.
Unicorn seemed like they were caught with their pants down. They might have been ready in the brush, but all of a sudden, Mithy, the Winter's Bite came in, and it was lights out for a couple of Unicorns. Starting things off, you cannot ask for a better gold infusion. Expect and Perks having that gold already.
Look at this, Perks. He's now completed his tier on his first back. That is going to be so good for the Rise in terms of his scaling. We talked about that the last time G2 and the Unicorns of Love went up against each other in game 1, it was G2 that had a clean start to that series, and they're looking to repeat the same thing.
But they're making the ballsy plays too. You have to give them credit. This is the kind of thing that they said they weren't really going to opt for. Early on trickery or making the big outplays. Instead, they just march 5 members strong into the Unicorns jungle. This shows they are not afraid to tango with this team.
G2. You heard the analyst desk discussing how they have the pushing lanes in the top, in the bottom as well, thanks to the virus. Rise getting pushed back a little bit, but the fact that he's already completed his day, he's not going to be caring about that. He doesn't have to look for an early back anymore, and he might even look to go aggressive.
Oh yeah, Perks already starting to push, getting that tier stacking going, and I like what you're talking about the compositions right now. They have the scaling Rise, they have the Graves that gets better as game goes on, and in Trick's hands, it's always deadly. It seems like there's just so much power in this G2 lineup.
Now, while Perks didn't have the best Rise game against the Kongdu monsters, he was going up against the LeBlanc, and he did publicly announce that people should not shop in the middle of the lane, but he's definitely learned from his mistakes. Meanwhile, moving to the rest of the map, you can already see that G2 putting a lot of pressure down in the bottom lane, utilizing this Braum. Now, Mithy has brought this out quite a few times, actually, and has had some pretty good success with it. It is his go-to melee support. It has a lot of great disengage tools, and it's fantastic for peeling champions like the Varus, who can struggle against someone like a Rengar and a Maokai, who are just trying to dive onto you in the middle of these big fights.
Yep, good counter-engage potential, and when the support pool is drained as deep as it was in this pick and ban phase, it's a comfort thing to fall back on. Hylissang showing the Taric. Meanwhile, back to the mid, Exile's getting chunked out by Perks yet again. This could be a rough one for the Orianna. Usually, you can play very safe, but you know, given over the first blood gold, Perks is having a ball to start things off. He's going to go back for some item buys.
Now, Ocean Dragon is the one on the board. I wouldn't be surprised if G2 look to get a little bit of vision control, like invest priority on getting that Scuttle Crab, pushing the vision line up in towards Unicorn's bottom half of the map, just so you can better set up for that early objective. If you can get it, it's extremely valuable early on into the game. But it also just helps, given that how much pushing power G2 have in the bottom, as well as they're starting to stack up in the mid. So that's likely to be the first objective that G2 try to prioritize.
Would expect to see that one. We talked about the last time these two teams met, who would be the one enforcing their style, their play preference on the game. And for game number 1, it was of course G2, and then game 2 got a little bit out of hand. But for Unicorns of Love, it seems like with the composition they have, they definitely need to make a few plays. We're looking at this Rengar. What can Xerxes do on it this time around? They picked it for a reason. He's just going to put a ward in for now and looking for Scuttle Vision.
The fascinating thing about the Unicorns is when you look at their performance throughout the European LCS, it's very much been about getting to that mid and late game, right? They don't really do much in the early game. They're not a hyper-proactive team in terms of snowballing their laners or trying to get an early advantage that they run away with. They're very much about, let's just play solid laning phase, let's just do what we can to go even, and then once we get to the mid lane, that's where we try and force plays. But what we've seen a lot throughout this tournament is that Unicorns, if they fall behind in the early game, they just struggle to know what to do. They don't really find ways of coming back into the game. And I think that when we look at their series against the Flash Wars in particular, they really struggled when they were put in such an early deficit. Now what I'd like to see from G2 is push this advantage, given that Unicorns haven't demonstrated a good tendency to come back when they are put behind early.
Yeah, expecting G2 to make those plays a little earlier on. Gonna have to contend with Xerxes inside of their jungle. Meanwhile, back down bot, Hylissang and Samix have pushed in. They get a dazzle, and Mithy is gonna intercept the deadly flourish. It's a battle of poke here. Hylissang taking a little low, but back within the safety of his minion line. Unicorns are that team that will try to make the big play. These two AD carries definitely had some big numbers over the course of the European LCS so far. In fact, both of them 1 and 2 in the way they get their CS differential, usually dominating those opponents. Xerxes gonna be walking on a ward, spotted immediately as he is inside of his own jungle. G2 had gotten deep placement down.
Right now, Trick just investing a lot of time into farming through the jungle. The big thing for me is identifying the differences between Trick and someone like Karsa, right? Because when we look back at his Graves game going into the Unicorns of Love, it was Karsa that was actually making life so difficult for the Unicorns. And Trick, he has the ability to output that same kind of pressure. He could look to just either put a lot of pressure up top, you have a pushing lane up there, you can look to help set up a dive down bottom, but the fact that his priority is on farming, I feel like is a part of the reason as to why G2 have such a slow early laning phase. They're very much about scaling, very similar to G2 in the sense that they play more towards the macro game and focus on objectives, but they don't do a huge amount in the early part of the game.
Yeah, and different to the Unicorns, they don't even tend to always fight for all of them. They see if they can out-rotate and grab objectives. It has been a different G2, though, in this tournament so far in their wins. We've seen them against Kongdu Monster make some aggressive plays, try to get involved when they maybe are less certain. But of course, Unicorns, this is a team that they know well, and honestly, they did beat them down 1 game out of 2. The second one managed to come back. Let's see if they can do it again. Tier now picked up for Sven as he backs. Be a lot of stacking, a lot of time. We could be in for a long one, Vedius.
You would expect that from a G2 game. On average, they are fairly long in terms of their games throughout the regular season, and when we think back throughout the tournament, there have actually been a surprisingly large number of games. Unicorns with a 55-minute game against Kongdu Monsters.
Yeah, that was wacky.
It was a little wacky, definitely not the Unicorns play style. Their first real proactive move was about 45 minutes into the game. But for the time being, pressure now slowly starting to be exerted from G2. They realize that enemy bottom lane has backed away, so Mithy can move into the enemy jungle with his jungler, try and get some deep vision down.
There goes.
Go for a pick.
Oh, Trick's gonna step forward. Xerxes is gonna sidestep, and Mithy tags right back in, flashing forward his perks, and Mithy claims the kill secure. Samix has to flash out as he gets exhausted. Hylissang joining the party, but Mithy goes forward. They are not shy of trying to go for these big flashy plays, but Hylissang gets a big stun off. All of the same, Samix is taken low, put in Rune Prison, but they can't put him 6 feet under. Teleport gets canceled. G2 realize they might have pushed too deep. You can even see Exile making his way down bot. This could be dangerous. Harry for G2 right now. They overcommit hard. They don't get punished for it just yet.
But Exile, he realizes he cannot go for the collapse. G2 can walk away happy after the kill that they were able to just pick themselves up. Bit of a mistake from Xerxes, given that it looks like he didn't respect the fact that G2 were making their way into the bottom half of the jungle. He used his leap onto a minion, and there was no way he was going to be able to get out of that, right? 1 versus 3. Very easy collapse to the side of G2. And you can just see, this is the mistake from Xerxes. He should have noticed that the ward was there. He doesn't respect the fact that all 3 members are on the other side of the wall. He ends up dropping. You have to praise Hylissang for his ability to disengage from this fight, though, because he gets a fantastic 3-man stun off, which just completely stops the dive from G2, and Samix is able to get away with his life.
That was damn close, though, and they needed to spend the teleport from Zizichachi to deter G2 from doing it again. All the same, they do get the push back on. G2, now with 3 kills, they put 1 more on Xerxes. We're 9 minutes into this game, and that gold is showing, 1,500. Xerxes heading his way up top, just looking for the Krug camp, but he hasn't really been as active on the map as we've seen Trick has been invading, moving around with the help of the rest of his carries. A lot of vision in this top side as well. Let's see what happens down bottom. Sven and Mithy pushing in the wave there, getting dangerously close to first brick.
The thing is, if you're the Unicorns, you're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place right now, because you know that bottom tower is going to go down eventually. But if you try to make the rotation up top, Nautilus should have enough wave clear to be able to just clear out the waves, and then Trick just needs to make his way up. And Unicorns probably can't even trade a bot tower for a top tower, so they're struggling to know how to respond to the pressure coming out from G2 right now.
Yeah, this is exactly how G2 want to play their game. Winning lanes, 2 out of 3. At least keeping even in the mid. Yes, it's been an Orianna farm advantage, but that doesn't matter much. Trick's making up for that by the fact that he got the first blood gold And there's an Ocean Dragon that G2 can take whenever they damn well please, although Unicorns have other plans. Xerxes steps forward just into the end of the line, backs away at a hair's breadth. Unicorns are massing towards this dragon right now. Are they going to try to contest it? Looks like it's not going to be started. They just wanted to get the vision clear.
I want to see more from Xerxes. Like, he's now level 7 on the Rengar. There are many overextended, you know, and I use the quote overextended loosely, but there are a lot of lanes where he has the opportunity to gank. And I feel like he's not utilizing it. This is something that we saw a lot from him in the Flash Wars where he was playing that Kha'Zix. He just didn't do much in the early game, and I feel like he needs to be a little bit more aggressive. There are windows of opportunity for him to capitalize on that he isn't taking advantage of, and it's just giving so much freedom for G2.
Yeah, he's late to the party yet again. They're going to bring Exile, see if they can get a collapse round, but Perkz is already there. Hylissang taken low, but they've stopped the tower for now. Cosmic Radiance, and in comes Xerxes, finally looking to make the play. Shockwave pulls in, Trick and Mithy, they take one kill. Exile's locked up by the chains. Double TPs coming way late, but it ends up being a 1 for none, and they're both canceled up top.
This is the proactivity that I wanted to see from the Unicorns. Good rotation from both mid laners to be able to respond to the gank that was trying to happen, but it will be G2 coming out ahead, and they will likely be able to get this tier 1 turret.
Yeah, 1 for 1, I meant to say, but all the same, they get the turret off the back of the kill. They force the Unicorns back. Sven is able to continue to push this one. That just keeps on pushing that gold lead right now, G2's favor. Unicorns, you're right, they just have not been able to respond fast enough.
The thing is, the gank itself was good from Xerxes, but I just think it was a little bit too late. The damage had already been done to the tower. Trick, he'd already made his way down to guarantee that objective for G2. And they end up walking away with the objective and a kill. So I just think that the Unicorns have left. I feel like there's a lot of room for them to be more proactive in the early game that they're not taking advantage of. But now the map's opened up. Now what I expect them to do is move their bottom lane up to the top half of the map, send the Maokai down bot. And then the problem you have then is G2 have a free window to move towards that dragon.
I think you really hit the nail on the head talking about Xerxes and how he's performed a little differently in this tournament compared to what we normally see him from in the LCS, from him, I should say. He is very proactive when he plays, and he's an innovator, you know, really rocking on that Ivern domestically, but you have to remember, he is a rookie player coming into the European LCS now on a big international stage. Seems like he might be feeling the pressure a bit because he just hasn't had the same impact.
I think that's a really interesting point because from having talked to the Unicorn players and the management, I think that when you play in the European LCS and you're so dominant, it's very easy for a rookie to get, not complacent, but, you know, just like have a lot of confidence, right? And then you come to an international tournament, you go against an experienced player in the form of Karsa, and then you start to realize the gap between you and your opponents. But I don't have time for that as you look in the mid lane.
All right. Unicorn stacking pretty heavy. They're looking to get the stun off on Perkz. Flashing forward, Hylissang does it. Shockwave pulls in both. The curtain call is open. Realm Warp. I don't know if Perkz is going to be able to take it. He does. Intercepted shots from Mithy there. Perkz is going to eke away with his life.
Beautiful escape from Perkz, getting out with a hair's breadth. But the play is good enough from Unicorns of Love to force that mid laner back and get themselves that mid lane tower. Being a lot more proactive on the map and trying to force this play. But let's backtrack to that gank down bottom. You can see Xerxes, this is the initiation of the original gank. Exile gets to the lane a little bit sooner, but a really good exhaust from Mithy is what turns the fight around in their favor. Now we see another fight in mid.
Oh, just action stops, action starts. Hylissang gets the Radiance on himself just in time, and the collateral damage is mostly tanked. Oh, a flash forward. Hylissang is still going to live through it. Close calls, and the piercing arrow only nails Xerxes in the back. No kills off the back of it. 13 minutes. We are starting to see the action open up here.
Xerxes body blocking the projectile from Trick to keep his support alive. And overall, the Unicorns doing what they can to try and fight back, but it's still G2 being able to find some kind of objective back on the map. I like the fact that the Unicorns are trying to force more plays, though, early on into the game. They recognize that Perkz is maybe a little bit out of position. They try to force the fight, and they end up with an objective overall. This is what they need to do. This is the difference from what we saw in their last matchup against each other, because in their game 1, G2 just had full control of the map. They didn't even give Unicorns a window, but now Unicorns are forcing windows. They're trying to find ways to prevent G2 from just completely rolling over them.
Yeah, grabbing themselves at least a tower off the back of it. They did concede the Ocean Dragon. It was a while before it happened, but the next one is going to be that Infernal Drake, so that'll be a much more valuable dragon for both G2 and Unicorns to try and fight over. The game could take a very different shape by the time that hits the Rift. 2,000 and some change is the gold advantage in G2's favor. They have map control, but you can see the Unicorns pushing out and trying to get some wards of their own. G2 taking a breather for just a second as they back for their item buys.
Exile currently sitting at 1 and 2. Not entirely his fault, but definitely a player worth talking about given that his performance throughout this tournament, like at IEM Oakland, he really stood out. He got MVP, he was a phenomenal individual, and throughout what we've seen of him so far, he's been playing extremely well. He's been a big facilitator in keeping Unicorns of Love alive, especially on that CAD arena. Even though it was late into the game was already lost, he managed to get that 2 versus 3 outplay, right? So this guy, for a rookie who's really come a long way since where he started, I think that he is a player that has really been able to demonstrate his growth.
Yeah, I think it's a big point. As that rookie last split, he really had a lot of struggles kind of making himself go big in the European LCS as they catch Sven on a shockwave, not enough to take him down to 0. Exile really has stepped up as a major, powerful force among European mid laners, and that's not a light statement.
And it's also nice to see that Perks has been also doing very well. The biggest criticism I have of him was that LeBlanc game, but other than that, he has been a very consistent performer, even in the G2 game versus the Flash Wolves, where everyone on G2 was getting destroyed. It was Perks that was actually holding his own against Maple. He was the solid lifeline that G2 had, but it just wasn't enough to net them anything back in that game. So it's nice to see the growth of both these individuals and how well they've been doing on this international stage.
Mm-hmm. Tough task, too. It has been some heavy competition, maybe not as expected by these European sides. Trick looking to go for a hunt down bottom side, but Bizachachi had the ward to spot him out, pinging, where they had a lot of vision investment up towards top. Still kind of battle lines drawn in that river, as the duo laners had been up there duking it out for the last of the outer turrets. See?
I'm looking at all this vision coming out from the Unicorns right now, because the top half of the map is littered with red wards right now. And they have full control over the Scuttlecrap.
You want to have control over the Scuttlecrap, to be fair.
You do, but the Rift Herald,
yeah.
that's the bad.
Scuttlecrap's big brother.
Yes, that guy. I don't think that's going to be their main priority, but the fact that they're investing this much vision over to the top side of the map just shows that they want to make sure that Samix is all right, because you can see that Hylissang is spending a lot of time roaming around, and that means that G2's next primary objective is either for that mid-tier 1 or the top tier 1. And you have to invest all this vision around the top side to just make sure that G2 can't force those plays unaware, so that it allows time for Unicorns of Love to react.
Still, there's somewhat of a timer. You mentioned Samix. He's actually been quite far behind in the farm game. We haven't talked about it with the early action around the map because Sven has just been honestly beating him down here, and that's going to manifest itself in an earlier spike for an AD carry that already has an earlier spike than the Jhin. Could be rough for the Unicorns to fight in those conditions.
A lot of it does come from the laning phase where G2 just had the constant shove. Samix was forced to go into the bottom lane. They also lost that tier 1 tower, which meant that Samix was constantly on the back foot. And this is very similar to what we saw in their last Game 1 performance, when these two bottom lanes went up against one another. So Sven continuing to assert his dominance over Samix.
Very true. Unicorns, they are trying to assert vision on the map. Xerxes Hylissang hiding out in this brush, but Mithy's able to sniff it out. He's been honestly unafraid to face check because he knows that he can spot these Unicorns out early. The Dazzle's going to come up and nail him. Meanwhile, in the mid, Perks goes in onto Exile. Exhaust is spent. Shockwave lands, not enough damage, and he's going to have to flash the anchor. Exile burning the summoner to get out of harm's way once again. Unicorns trying to collapse in mid, but they see the tree coming. Mile away, Samix going Ghost Blade just to get out of there faster.
And while they will force Exile back to base, G2 can't really get much off the back of this. They've reclaimed vision control over the Rift Herald and the river, but they haven't been able to push that vision line any further. And I feel like that you need to move away from the top side of the map for G2 and actually start investing a lot more of your vision towards the bottom side, because the Dragon's going to be spawning in about a minute's time. This should be your next primary objective to pick up. And the fact that you've just been able to force the flash out of Orianna as well as the cleanse gives you a prime opportunity to really set up for that next objective.
Yep. I think we definitely answered the question so far of who was going to play whose style this time around. G2 have asserted themselves on this map much better than the Unicorns can match. Still plenty of time to turn that around, scaling on both sides. Nearly unkillable Maokai if we get into that late stages of the game, but G2, Perks has been rolling on this rise ever since minute 1. 2-0-2 now. Still working on stacking up his tier, but he's had some early stacks of that Rod of Ages. Exile's just forced to check with the ball because there's so much vision on the G2 side. They're setting up for this Dragon. With 30 seconds to go, Unicorns are going to have to scramble if they want to contest it.
Especially when they have their bottom lane on the top side of the map trying to push. They might just have to concede the Dragon and try to get themselves a tier 1. Expect does have the TP and he has reasonable wave clear, but the reality is if you're the Unicorns of Love, you could try and force a fight, but Samex is a little bit behind Sven. Exile is a little bit behind Perks because of how strong he is. And so I think if you're the Unicorns, maybe just because, oh, what am I surprised? Like, Unicorns, they have to fight. That's their nature,
they're going to
right?
go for it. They know, forget about it. We're going to head down towards bottom side. As the 20-minute marker passes, Baron hits the Rift, but all eyes are on the Dragon right now. Unicorns, they started off the Infernal, trying to zone with the Dazzle. Command Protect on, they just don't have the damage though. Samex is not able to get in here as Perks is around the side. Dragon going low, can they smite steal it away? No, it's gonna be taken by Xerxes, and they go invulnerable for a few seconds. Curtain Call opened up, it was all a bait after the fact, but Expect is around the backside. Exile going down, that's a double kill for Sven now, as they pick up a third. Mithy nearly gets taken down to 0, but all the same, a Dragon traded for 3 kills, 1 onto Trick. Shachi, though, will almost surely fall. Perks flashes forward. Shachi blows the flash and doesn't clear the wall. He's in trouble, surrounded by G2 members. Might take him a while, but they'll shed the bark off the tree.
Beautiful team fight from both teams. Hillesheim with the fantastic ultimate, but G2 with the better flanking. Yes, G2, they did lose the Dragon, but they come out ahead of the team fight, and they should be able to get the mid tower in exchange.
3-0-4 now on this rise. They got 2 kills for Sven's Varus. The carries are starting to roll forward, and yes, they don't have a minion wave, but they can definitely get a few pot shots off until it turns around. Unicorns are going to respawn. We're still early enough into it, but let's take a look at how that Dragon fight panned out again.
But keep your eyes on Hillesheim, because look at how early he uses the ultimate, just as the shockwave. Oh no, that was Exile. He missed his own shockwave onto his own team. Expect gets a really good flank off, shutting down all 3 members of the Unicorns of Love. I wanted to praise the way in which G2 were able to play around the shockwave, but then it wasn't even their shockwave. They didn't even have to. So big misplay from the Unicorns of Love. Yes, they get the Dragon, but they end up losing the fight.
That's why it's such a crucial thing. Exile playing this Orianna, I mean, this is why it's a champion so iconic, can make or break games. It's not at, you know, absolute 100-0 damage yet, but you need to be able to place the ball in the right spot if you want to fight, especially when you expose yourself to a flank like they did there. Perks around the side was cleaning house. And he's starting to roll forward now, not just him, Sven. The Edge of Night was completed. They're still stacking tiers on both those carries. And even Trick, he's got his Black Cleaver too. I mean, G2, this is sitting pretty for them right now with the 4,000 gold advantage.
Their next priority is to try and take down this mid turret. There's little that Exile can do to stop it because he has no flash, and against 4 members, it becomes very easy for G2 to dive that lane. So they just have to concede it. G2 continue to extend their gold lead, extend their map control, and they're going to do it once more by taking that tower in the top.
And Chachi can't even do enough to finish the tower off down bottom. Unicorns had hardly tickled it, and he just sends a few auto attacks that way as Expect tags in to clear the mini wave with Riptide. Easy peasy. Meanwhile, they had Perks up top, so G2, they've cleared all of the outer turrets. This should give them a lot more map control, and it's getting very close to Baron contesting time. A couple more minutes before you could think G2 might be confident enough to try and force a bait out here, but Unicorns, they've got to start finding something. We need to see bigger plays attempted from them. So far, that Dragon was honestly the only thing they were able to do for the last few minutes.
Thing is, if you're the Unicorns of Love, how many plays have we seen them try to force? They try to force one down bot, they're going to force one mid.
One more, they're looking to send the Rengar in for the shockwave. It gets blocked out by Mithy as the curtain call opened up. They pushed them back for just a second, but that's a few ultimates burned. Xerxes, thrill the hunt. Well, it wasn't very thrilling for him.
Now you see the power of this brawl, his ability to disengage from anything that the Unicorns of Love try to force. Make it very difficult for the Rengar to really get in. It was why we saw a lot of Malzahar being picked into Rengar, and this is one of the advantages that Braum does have.
Yeah. So many bans focused on Mithy this game, and he just says, that's all right.
It's a general, right?
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, Hillesheim onto this turret now. Vizichachi's gonna get double teamed as Perks was taking a party portal solo. It's exhaust on, Expect. They have the damage, they have the CC. He twisted, advances in, but Perks blows him up. 404 and a Maokai is not found.
quick rotation from Perks down to the bottom lane, gets the shutdown onto Chachi, which means that there's nothing to stop G2 from putting the pressure onto this tier 2 tower, and they can just keep farming in the mid. But the Unicorns, do they try to engage on the mid?
This is when you start to see G2 really revving the engine right now. We've seen this formula before in the European LCS, 24, 25 minutes into the game, and they start blowing it wide open. But Unicorns have been just not moving fast enough around the map, and you can see them cluster towards mid, trying to save that tower, trying to clear the minions away. They do it, but at what cost at this point?
G2 have full control over the map. They have good vision around top side. They're able to make a quick rotation down to the bottom half. Usually you don't invest that many resources into trying to kill the tank, but G2, they saw a window, they took advantage of it, and they're going to come out ahead in the objectives.
Yeah, ganking the teleport. You can't have anyone teleporting in to save the day. Pings now focusing on the Baron pit. As we hit 25 minutes, there will be another Infernal available. G2 counting their lucky stars this time around. Unicorns have ceded so much control on this map. You never can count this team out. However, things are not looking great for the Pink Power Ponies.
7,000 gold deficit at 25 minutes into the game will make things difficult for the Unicorns to win out on these fights. And one of the big things that G2 have been praised for is while they're not a team-fighting team in the sense that they try to force fights, when they get into these fights, they are exceptionally good. They know exactly how to properly position. Their target selection is often on point, and we saw a great example of that in the last Dragon play. You had Perks coming in from the river, you had Expect coming in from the top side. It was a three-pronged attack from all these different sides for G2, and they're able to easily get a collapse down onto the Unicorns. Now imagine this great team-fighting team with a 7,000 gold lead, right? It just becomes extremely difficult for Unicorns to find windows. But that's not to say that they are completely out.
Oh, they will force themselves through the cellar door if they have to.
I mean, you do have an Orianna and a Jhin. The ability to get those picks is still fantastic. If G2 incorrectly set up around the Baron, and hey, Europe are not... They're
not the cleanest Baron region,
exactly,
let's be honest.
Right? So there's always that window, and it only takes one overextension for UoL to force a fight.
There we go. Curtain call's open. Chachi's teleport's going to finish pretty soon, but it looks like they might have disengaged, flashing forward. They get a stun on. They look for Perks. The shockwave is just enough. They get a shutdown. Hylissang securing it, and the Cosmic Radiance comes down just in time. 2 quick kills, and Unicorns are eyeballing the Baron.
We talked about it, Pyro. You can never count the Unicorns out. If they see an opportunity, they will try and force the fight. Baron may be the objective that they go for, but it could be risky.
Yeah, but Chachi runs headlong into Expectant's Ven. It looks like they want to re-engage his Xerxes, forcing the immediate flash on his Ven in the heel. He's right on top of him, sticking, but the shields are enough, and Xerxes is not going down. Samix gets the final shot. Trick is tanking right in the middle, and it's only Expect. Unicorns know they can clean house, and now it's Baron for real.
4 kills for 0 for the Unicorns of Love. They've got Baron in their eyes, and it is 26 minutes into the game. That gold lead is gonna mean nothing.
They have turned up the heat. All of a sudden, the switch flicks, and Unicorns, they know that they have the fight, and bada boom, they pick themselves up a big Baron. And this game has just turned on its head, Vedius.
My word, Unicorns. Whenever you think that they can't do anything, whenever you think that that is it, they always just find a way back into the game. But then you have to wonder, like, mad props to the Unicorns for being able to force that engage and get the collapse onto G2. But then, what were G2 doing? Why do they have 3 members sitting in the mid lane? Why are they not setting up proper vision? Why are they not respecting the engage potential? As Unicorns now set up for this Infernal break.
They turn their attention on to Expect, who is looking for the flank. Shockwave going to be used just to pull him in, and wow, they just make him not look tanky at all. Meanwhile, Chachi is not having any trouble with Perks and Mithy. G2 are going to be scattered to the winds. Exhaust is on. The Chains of Corruption used, but Perks is not getting out of there cleanly. He has been slippery all game, but slippery no more. A double kill to Xerxes, finding his first 2 of the game, and it's going to be a free dragon, or rather, a well-earned dragon for the Unicorns of Love.
They have turned the go switch on, and they are unrelenting with their aggression onto G2. They now have the Baron. They've just picked themselves up a second Infernal Drake, and they are looking to knock onto the doors of the base of G2.
They've still got that goal deficit, but as you mentioned, it doesn't mean a damn thing, Vedius. Unicorns have the momentum. Perks is 20 seconds away. Expect is still 10. This is going to be a hard hold for G2 right now, and the Unicorns, they are marching in with that massive lead. Curtain call open, Mithy tanking 1, Mithy tanking 2, the third flies the 4th, he goes unbreakable, but the base is broken open, and Unicorns of Love will walk away to spend that gold.
Great setup from the Unicorns, utilizing the ultimate from Samix to zone away the remaining members of G2 from that turret, but they don't get too greedy. They take the objective and they back off. But you can see here, 3 members of G2 just sitting in the mid lane. They have no tower to keep themselves alive. The teleport is far too late from Expect because the damage has already been done. With Perks being taken out of the fight very early on into the fight itself, they lose so much of their damage, and this allows Unicorns to move over to the Baron, but they don't engage on it. They just use it as a bait, immediately re-engage onto the rest of G2. And once Sven is gone, that's it. There's nothing left in the package of G2 to be able to fight back against the Unicorns. They get themselves the Baron and they regain control of the game.
And this is the game sense, the macro sense of forcing fights, forcing teams to dance to your tune that we've expected from Unicorns in the first time these 2 teams matched up, that we expected from the Unicorns in this tournament. We're finally getting to see it, and man, it's beautiful. Outer tower gonna get fired down, but Perks is gonna try to make a play happen. He delivers expect to the back line, but they're already invincible for a couple of seconds. Can the Unicorns hang tough right now? Samix is gonna get blown through, but he's not dead just yet. Finally, they will finish him off. Sven pierces him through with an arrow. Hillisang is gonna be next on the menu, but Mithy already taking low. Xerxes going in for the AD carry, instant exhaust. Perks takes down Exile. This fight is all chaotic all the time. Hillisang goes down, a double kill for Perks. Shachi hanging, we've seen this one before. And that is going to not end well for the tree. Triple kill, and Perks picks up one more.
And now it's G2 with the turnaround fight. They punish the Unicorns for being a little greedy. They only have 3 members down bottom side. Exile isn't there to provide support, and G2 are able to find a fight that goes in their favor. They're now looking to try and get some objectives back on the map. But right now, there's nothing really for them to take.
We can try to march into the base, but the death timers are ticking slowly. Samix is nearly up right now, and G2 realize they can't get anything else. Unicorns can wipe some sweat off their brow that they didn't lose all of their Baron buffs. Xerxes still hanging on as he clears the wave down bottom.
But we're seeing, again, these mistakes from these European teams where they've only got 3 members here. Where is Exile? He's far too far away from the fight to really have much contribution. It's too late by the time that Expect is already on top of Samix and the damage has been done. Now Exile is the main damage dealer and there's no one to peel for him. He can just easily get blown up by both Perks and Expect. And then, sure, okay, you get onto the backline, but look at Sven, he's completely unharmed. There is no damage threats left that he has to worry about, and it is just this oversight. G2 made the mistake at first, UoL make exactly the same mistake, and it's just about coordination and being a setup for these objectives.
And now you've got a lot of gold infused into Perks, and not the only one. 725 now on this rise, and he's rocking himself 4 items. Getting his way to that full build. Scary late game rise, gonna be hard for the Unicorns to deal with. We saw them turn the game around. They gave the lead right back up. It's 3,000 in favor of G2. Still be a while before the next Baron is available, but they're clearing Scuttle Vision on that side. Waves are pretty even, so Unicorns, they just need to not get collapsed on once again. G2, they're back in the driver's seat, but it took them a big fight to do it.
The thing is, if you're the Unicorns of Love, what you have to be mindful of is how easy it is for G2 to collapse onto you when you're trying to push onto these objectives. So when the Unicorns are setting up for a tower push, it is very easy for Expect to just throw out that hook, get a TP flank, maybe a Rise route, maybe a Varus ultimate.
They got a lot of tools to lock them down.
Exactly, there's all this pick potential on the side of G2 where if you're just slightly out of step, they can catch you off guard. But the Unicorns, they have great engage tools, so G2 just have to maintain good vision control. But when you look at the map, it is entirely red favored right now. The Unicorns have done such a great job of controlling a lot of the entrances to G2's jungle, and it is enabling them to get these engages onto G2 where they don't have answers to countering it.
But it was G2 trying to force something there. Mithy stepped a little far forward and honestly got a face full of command attack. Unicorns baiting and waiting. It's going to be another minute and 15 before Baron hits the rift. The Dragon, similar story, but it's only a Cloud Drake. Unicorns have 2 Infernals. That is definitely helping them out in these fights. Extra 16% AD and AP coming to bear against this big team. G2 working their way up to their final items right now.
And a lot of big items have been completed. When Xerxes gets that Guardian Angel completed, he's going to be even more obnoxious for Sven.
And they have the Cosmic Radiance too. I mean, there's a lot of invulnerability to go around.
Like, these team fights are exciting, right? It's very back and forth, but it very much depends on who gets that initiation. Because if it's the Unicorns of Love, then you're going to get that 2-3-man shockwave, which will swing things in their favor. But if it's G2 and they're able to break the fight apart, they're able to split off Exile from the rest of his team, that's when it can very easily go in G2's favor. So here comes the TP.
He's gonna look for the flank right now. Expect the rest of G2, they know they need to run. They've caught Expect, throw him in with the shockwave, but they have a redemption. In comes the Cosmic Radiance. Exile is gonna be flashing out just in time for it to come and Perks around the side. Rampage kill onto Samix. G2 react with ferocity rarely seen. A double kill for Perks. He is rolling, and once again, Chachi caught in the middle of it all. Sven's gonna take another. It's only Hilly left alive, and G2, they're hungry for the base.
It is the Unicorns that try to force the fight, but this time, G2 were ready. Hillisang, he's gonna try and buy time for his base, but I don't think it's gonna be enough as G2 break down the doors of the Unicorns of Love base.
It had been back and forth, teeter-tottering for a while, but G2, they have the quicker reaction time, and they get themselves an inhibitor. Flashing forward, Expectus says, that's okay, I'll tank the base. With no unicorns left, Hylissang's not gonna get back in time, and he has absolutely no backup. There is nothing stopping G2 from taking a huge statement. Game number 1 over the Unicorns of Love.
Things were looking very clean for G2 early on into that game.